Shall we move into our review for the week, Trey?
Sure.
Our review for the week is Tokyo Metro. Tokyo Metro is from Jordan Draper, who is a sort of a designer that we're sort of become interested in recently. He has a very interesting line of games. They all look, they're all in these little small boxes. They look like you'd buy them at a fancy museum somewhere. They're very artisan and beautifully thought out, with interesting components that you don't find in a lot of board games. And his board game designs as well run the gamut from dexterity games to, heavy sort of 18xx style games to party games. He seems to, every game seems to be in a completely different genre. He's a very prolific and interesting designer. He's lived in Japan for many years. That's why he has this Tokyo series of board games. You can go to his website, jordandraper.com, DRAPER, and you can see all of his exciting games. His most famous game is probably a game called Import Export, which is sort of his take on Glory to Rome. And I would say that Tokyo Metro is sort of his take on 18xx. Often his games are clearly ones that he loved and wants to do his own version of. Why don't I just quickly give you the stats on Tokyo Metro? It plays 1 to 5 players, 60 to 90 minutes, which it's probably 90 minutes, I'd say. Maybe 90 minutes to 2.5 hours. The weight on BGG...
So it's not long.
It's not long. No, yeah. Compared to the genre it's in, it's very short. BGG weights it as a 3.21. That might even be a little light. It's a pretty heavy game. There's a rules overhead. It's a teach. Which definitely adds to it. I didn't know it plays 1 to 5 players. I'm interested in the solo version of it. I didn't see that in the rules. Maybe it's somewhere. Let me read you the description. In Tokyo Metro, players take on the role of private investors looking to build up stations across Tokyo, speculate on train lines, and comprise a shared network to benefit multiple parties. The core of the game is built around worker placement, which opens up 3 possibilities. Walking and riding trains across the Metro map, in order to build new stations at advantageous locations for income when trains pass through. Investment into train lines, either by purchasing stock or becoming a shareholder in the line, or by speculating on a train line you do not own stock in order to potentially double your speculation. Build up your available actions by purchasing more action discs, purchasing discarded action cards for personal use, or gaining tokens for specific use. With route planning, investing, speculating, area control, and a real replication of the Tokyo area, Tokyo Metro brings a heavy economic twist to the Tokyo series. That is from the publisher. So let's talk about the components first. Tokyo Metro comes with a cloth board. Now, in order to play this, you do not need a piece of plexiglass, but I would highly recommend a piece of plexiglass. So this is not a paper board. This is cloth. And the cloth comes in a small box, meaning that it is folded probably 16 times over in order to fit in this small box. So there are creases and lines all over it. Yes, you could take an ironing, put it on an ironing board and iron it flat. Or you can go to Home Depot for $12 and get a 3x3 piece of plexiglass. And if you're a board gamer, you probably already own one. I got one this week, finally.
Okay.
Went to Home Depot and grabbed one. Not very expensive, $10, I think.
Pros and cons of the cloth board. Yeah. There are many.
So you are going to need something.
Pretty.
Yeah, it's very pretty. And it is almost an exact replica of the Tokyo subway line. I've heard they made some changes for gameplay. But it looks like a map of the Tokyo subway system. The
theme, I feel like the theme here is kind of great and not almost like there was not a translation error, obviously, but this is kind of a unique thing about train games is like you are not building lines. Like most train games, we are laying lines and connecting things. This is not one of those. The entire map exists from the beginning, and now we are kind of like we are buying these elements that already exist. So they'll say
what trains run.
Build train station, but what it really is that you have purchased a train station that already exists. So it felt like there may be, if they had themed this a little bit more of like, we have these existing lines and train stations, everything's getting privatized, and you're now buying into this public system and making money from what you own and what you are running. And I think there's a little bit of history there where you had multiple train lines running in Tokyo that were privately owned and were competing. So it's not like you just go into the New York subway and everything is just New York public.
Right. I was definitely interested in understanding the theme because I didn't really fully get it. And obviously, like, you don't make money every time a train comes through your station on the subway because it does it 1,000 times a day. But I think that part's a little abstracted. So let's talk about this in relation to 18xx games because it's impossible not to. So 18xx games, the three main compartments, the three main things that make an 18xx game an 18xx game is stocks, stock manipulation, buying stocks. This game has that. You are buying stocks in multiple train lines, all of the different subway lines, the E, the G, the L, the M, the things like that. You are buying stock in. When you are the first player to buy stock in that company, it begins to run. There are only 3 stock. So usually in a train game, you buy 10% shares, right? And if you have 50%, then you are the president, and the train line starts operating.
And you control it,
right? There are 3, and whoever buys the first is the president, basically, and the train line starts running. Although there isn't technically a president in this one. There's 3 shares.
There's no decision. You don't get any decision making ability, but you are the majority share.
By buying 1 share, the train line becomes
operational.
It starts moving down the path. You can never own more than 1 share in your own company, in that company. So somebody else can buy one, but it gets more expensive. The second one is more expensive than the first, and the third one is more expensive than the second.
More expensive and returns less.
And you get worse points on it. So basically, like the first one in is going to get the most points at the end of the game for it. Second one will get less, third will get less than that, and they get more expensive. So less points and more money. So, getting in first is really important. Although in the game we played, definitely people were diversifying and jumping into other people's stuff because at certain points it becomes very cost effective, especially when it's a very successful one, and gets you a good return on your money. So stocks, that's a big part of this game. Next is building train lines. That's a huge part of 18xx. Not in this game. All train lines are built. The only decisions you have is if the trains on them run.
Yeah. So do they become operational? Right.
And they run on a fixed track. So in 18xx games, so that's the next thing. So building train lines. Then the last one is operating trains. In 18xx, you decide where the trains go, and usually it's always going to be the way that's going to make you the most money. The trains on this one are just sort of on a back and forth ping pong from point A to point B and then back. They every turn they will move a certain amount of spaces. They can move more if you add some speed tokens to them. But every turn they're going to move, I think, 5.
Right. Instead, like in 18xx, you typically have you're improving your engines that are running a lot of times. Here, the only thing we have is you can do some minor manipulation of how quickly do the trains run.
The trains run automatically, and you can decide how if they run a little faster, which is just always going to be good because they'll get to the end and back faster, and they'll pass through your station. So that's what makes an 18xx, and that's the similarities here. Now, the big differences here is that you are buying stations, and that's sort of the main part of the game. You are buying these stations, and every time a train runs through them, you get a certain amount of points, and stock in that train goes up. If you own stock and the station,
let me
just
stop
the
you
stock goes up.
Because you don't get points in this game. This is one of those games where a person with the most money at the end wins.
Which is an 18xx thing, yeah.
Condition. So yeah, the 2 things you can kind of purchase in this game is buying stocks into train lines, make the trains run, or you can buy the stations themselves. And kind of like the core central rule here is if I own a station and a train line passes through it and I don't own part of that train, I get paid cash. I make $200.
Right. Then the value of the train stock goes up.
Right. Both the train line benefits, because this is it's operating, it's being successful. So the value of the train stock pool goes up by $200, and the station that it went through made $200 cash, liquid. I can now invest that money.
And also, that's basically the only way in the game to get cash outside of loans.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
If, however, I run a train line that I do own part of through one of my train stations, the value of that train line goes up by $500.
Right.
So, big return on the value of the train. However, none of that is immediately in my hands, which is it's not operational cash.
Right.
So a big decision a lot of times is, do I want to, buy train lines that are going to push up my stocks of my train, or am I just trying to get cash to buy more stocks or to buy more stations? And this is kind of one of the core decisions you're making in the game.
Right. So
we have not talked about the worker placement.
Right, that's what I was just getting to. So that is obviously something that's not in 18xx at all, and is a huge part of this game is worker placement. So, and it does it in a really interesting way that I'd never seen before, which is there are a deck of cards, and the cards come out in a certain order. They're stacked by dots, so the 1s and the 2s and the 3s. But the order they come out in is sort of Agricola-esque in the sense that
very much like Agricola.
You don't exactly know what's going to come out in the order, but you know that all of them will come out, and they decide what actions are available. And on those cards, you then have a bunch of different actions you can take. And some of them will cost multiple workers. So that's sort of a Feast for Odin kind of thing. Like this action may cost 2 workers, this may cost 1. There's also, of course, like in any Uwe Rosenberg game, actions that get you more workers. And of course, those are very valuable, family planning. But yeah, you have a certain amount of workers. You're going to be placing them, taking actions. And that is the majority of the game. Then there is a little, then the trains run automatically, and then beginning a turn, you get a couple free moves. So you actually have a person that walks around on the board, and it doesn't walk around on the train lines, although it can move with the trains, but it walks around in these little squares behind the train lines. And in order to buy a station, your person actually has to be there. And one of the actions is buying that person a bicycle so that when they move, they could move farther.
Right.
Which is a nice, fun little bit of theming. So that is definitely...
It limits you from just being able to buy any station you want. You are limited by what you can get to. But riding the train lines themselves, now that they're running, there's a very interesting kind of planning of I'll be able to catch this train to get to that valuable station, because it becomes clear like some stations are definitely going to be worth more than others, and we're racing to buy this kind of like valuable real estate.
Right. Let's talk about the quick actions really quick. There's move, there's build stations, there's invest. This is how you buy more stock. This is how you start companies.
There's loan, like a core component of train games for me feels like you can take loans.
Yep. The loans are very hard to pay back. That's something we found. There's only a handful of actions in the game that even allow you to pay them back, and you must pay them back. So you get 1,000 yen, and you can pay back 1,000. At the end of the game, you lose 1,500 for every loan you have. So.
And it's an action in order to pay them back, and it's a very rare action that only exists at the end of the game. So generally, you're almost always taking $1,000 and paying back 1,500.
And I never even. I mean, and it's rare to have 1,000.
Just know that that's what you're doing. You're purchasing liquidity.
Right. Then there's the start action, which allows you to actually make a train just go to its endpoint and come back once, which you would want to do if you have a lot of stations on that and you want to make some money. But nobody actually owns that station, that train line yet. Then there's speed, which you can make your trains automatically move a little bit faster. There's bike, which we talked about.
And protect you against speculation.
Right. There's discount, which is really interesting. And you guys, we actually found out, because I played with Paul, you guys actually were playing it wrong. So on discounts, you get to place a token on a spot in order to get you a discount on a later action. So the way you guys are doing it is that you actually use that worker and move it from there and take the action. Where what you really do is you place
there.
Nope. You have to spend another worker for the action. It doesn't get a free move and then become the worker.
That's what I'm saying. You're saying that it goes on a discount. You never pull it.
No, you do. You put it on top of the disc that you've just placed on that spot. So I put something on a 400 discount, right? So later on I'll get 400. Then I want to take something that costs 600. I have to put a man there. But I can then decide to put that disc, to take that discount disc off and put it on top of that person in order to get a discount.
We have been playing the game wrong.
Yeah, so it doesn't actually, it's not a use this worker later. It is that worker's used, and you can decide when you want to use it that round to get a discount. Makes the discount a lot weaker, but still, it definitely got used a lot in our game, even when we were using it correctly.
Money's tight.
Yeah, money is very tight in this game, and you will be taking loans. Bidding allows you basically a Age of Steam sort of skip in the bidding. So every round you're going to be doing a blind bid, a one-round blind bid for turn order. Then there's loans we talked about. Then there's speculate. Speculate is the most complicated part of the game, and basically allows you to tank somebody else's train line at the end of the game. And it's sort of the most interactive and mean aspect of the game. Yeah, and I had one of my train lines absolutely tanked.
Right,
Absolutely.
but you have to play. You can't just throw everything into your own train lines and then leave them open to speculation. You have to protect them, and you can protect them by getting the speed up on the trains, because there's only 2 spots where you can kind of speculate them on. Anyway, then it's interesting. It's one of those push and pull things. It's pretty common in these train games where the best thing to do is not necessarily like just running your own train line really well. Yeah. Like that's rarely the right thing to do. You have to
attack others and protect yourself. And it becomes a little bit of a war game.
Participate in a lot of things.
I think the game doesn't work without speculate. I think it's a really a necessary addition to the game. Then there's action, which gets you more workers. And the last one is cards. So there are, every round, 1 row of the available worker placement spots will be discarded and fall off the board. And you can buy those. And then those are actions only you can take for the rest of the game.
Cannot be blocked.
Cannot be blocked and cannot be used by anybody else. And now you have that action for the rest of the game, which is very powerful.
Very cool. That's a very cool thing.
That's how the game works. Trey, what are your thoughts on it?
I really like this game because I I'm not a huge 18xx fan. This seems to preserve the elements that I do like. So the stock part is fun. I love the worker placement. Like that's just my jam.
Yep.
Generally, it's beautiful. It plays very quickly. It does not have a tremendous amount of AP.
Right. Turns are pretty quick.
Yeah, because I think the thing that is the most AP about a lot of train games is the laying track thing. You're looking at this map, and it's a big, wide open board, and where am I going to lay stuff? This takes all this away, and it's simply a matter of I'm looking at the map and what looks like a good place to kind of like invest in.
Right.
So this is hitting a lot of great buttons for me. I'm eager to play it again and play discount properly because it probably does affect a little bit like my one criticism of the game, which is that it felt to me every time I've played it like it's gone on one turn longer than it should. Because the actions in the final round, you often feel like I have many more workers to place than I actually have actions to do.
I think that's the discount thing happening because we didn't have that in our game.
That's right.
And Alfred said when that's right. I was playing with Paul and Alfred. And Alfred even said like, this game has a problem in the end round, but when we were playing correctly, I had many things I wanted to do with my last few workers.
Yeah, the main thing you want in that last round is you just want the trains to run again because it's going to generate a lot of income.
Right.
As far as like, and then there is a very large end scoring component to this game, so it's hard to really tell who's winning. Everybody's holding a bunch of stocks. You have cash on hand.
Right. It has a big sort of stock payout thing at the end. But
that's again very train gamey, and you see you get these large piles of cash at the end that we're all going to compare. Yep. And each game we've played so far has been really competitive, where the difference between first and last has been within 10 to 15%.
Well, I think that's because you were playing on a level playing field with players who had only played the same amount of times as you. We played against Alfred, who'd played twice, and he wrecked us. I think much like 18xx, this is a game where if this is your first game and you played with someone who's played a couple times, you're going to lose. And it's going to be a learning game for you.
There's a lot to take in with this map. There's a beautiful map, but there's a lot going on here.
Yeah.
So I'm a fan. I think that this would certainly be in my top 5 for 2018. I'm kind of surprised that I didn't see more about it. And I think maybe like the strength of the boxing and the cloth map and all this other stuff might actually not be the greatest commercial choice, but I think it's a really good game. Like we've entered into this weird realm where when you and I first started playing board games, we played games with black and white and brown cubes, and if you wanted to have a game with custom pieces, you got your finger wag your way saying, hey, that's going to make the game too expensive. You got to think about your components and keeping things cheap in order to make it. That world is gone. Yep. We are now in the realm of custom pieces, thousands of minis in certain games. And so the kind of economy, beautiful game, but it's super economical, and I think that's actually a kind of a negative in the modern marketplace.
Yeah, well, and Jordan Draper, I think, is making all these games himself and selling them on his website. These are not games you can buy at your local friendly game store or online. You
at all, huh?
Not on Amazon, not on Cool Stuff, anywhere. So
he doesn't have a big marketing campaign behind him either.
No, and I feel these are being produced probably by himself, or through a small print run company. You can buy his games directly through his website, which is jordandraper.com, and he will ship them to you. They are reasonably priced. This game is $50, which is pretty average. It's a very small box, but there's a lot in that box.
Oh, see, that's interesting. So many people will experience a disconnect of looking at this box, which is like a 2.5 by 3 inch by 4 maybe 5 inch box.
Yeah, it's the size.
To most people, this looks
like
the
size of a large iPhone case.
Looks like a $20 game from the outside,
right?
And that's so $50, you'd be like, what? No. Yeah. We all have ideas about what a game should cost based upon the size of the box.
But it's a heavy game, and this is I love a game that can pack a lot. PAX Renaissance and this are both games that are in very small boxes and are heavy, and I have a lot of strategy and a lot of replay value in them. I enjoyed it a lot. I'm really excited for City of the Big Shoulders, which you just brought for me from Gen Con, which also is a Euro worker placement style take on 18xx, also a 18xx without any trains. There's even less of a connection between 18xx and City of the Big Shoulders than there is with Tokyo Metro, because there is no actual line. There's no things running. It's just you're running companies and buying stocks and manipulating them and worker placement. I'm obviously very interested in a lot of the mechanics that are involved in 18xx, and very excited to see designers who seem to be very interested in taking those aspects and making them Euro friendly and a little more board gamey. So I really enjoyed this. I would happily play it any time. I'm very excited. I really feel like I feel like whether or not it stays in my collection or not is going to be dependent on how much I like City of the Big Shoulders, because I feel like they'll sort of scratch the same itch of like worker placement 18xx game.
I'm not sure you're right about that.
Okay.
Especially having seen the game demoed a little bit at Gen Con.
Yeah.
I think these are going to be pretty different games.
Okay, cool.
So
I think Tokyo Metro, if you like 18xx games and Euros, I mean, this you just buy it. Like,
this might,
easy
like,
buy.
actual 18xx players, this probably isn't for them because it's too simplified.
Well, that's the thing. I'm saying if you really like 18xx and Euro games.
Well, you're not listening to us, for one thing. If you really like 18, that's a different group.
Yeah. But the Train Rush, which is a great podcast about 18xx, by the way, if you're looking for one. Yeah, I think this is worth looking at. So it's really hard to find a lot of information about this game. There's no real videos explaining it. You cannot get the rule book online. This is one of those buy and try games as opposed to try then buy.
Well, we're telling you to try it.
Yeah, we're telling you to give it a try. I mean, hopefully this podcast will give you some information on it, because it's a game with not a lot of information out there on it, and it is a small game. But it definitely deserves more attention than I think it's getting at the moment.
Yeah, is it a weird thing about our format, Matt, is that we have all these different co-hosts, and when a co-host comes on, they end up being like an advocate for the game they're reviewing. Like, it's no accident the games that I've reviewed here, because they're some of my favorite games of the last year. And then a lot of the ones the other co-hosts have reviewed, they've given them really good reviews. A lot of those weren't my favorite.
Right.
So it sounds like we're saying, this game is great every single time.
Yeah, we've had some negatives, and we've had some, but I think also in the first few rounds, we're itching to talk about games we're excited about, as opposed to, being like, well, let's review that. I didn't love it, but I think we'll be getting to those more. That's our review of Tokyo Metro. Check it out at jordandraper.com. He's definitely worth looking into for all different types of genres, and I think you'll find something you like in the board game world in Jordan's designs.